Well, we are finishing today our series called Soul Full, and we've been talking about what it would mean to have the inside of us. That's your soul, your inner self, your heart, your mind, your spirit, your soul. If that was full, likely, if you were pressed, you might not be able to give a definition to what a soul is, but I would say you likely know when really you, on the inside is empty or tired or really longing for something more in life. You know what that means. And so that's the kind of thing we've been addressing. And one of the ways that we're doing it is, this is an upgraded chart. We had a little more than twice the number of people take the spiritual health assessment. I'm going to show you the link here in just a second, but I want you to recognize what we're doing here is we've flagged about 8 categories of spiritual health for a follower of Jesus. The Bible, engagement with the Bible, the Holy Spirit, living on mission, having whole relationships, prayer, worship, serving, generosity. And we're asking people basically to just respond to a short assessment so you can get a clear picture of how it is that you're doing, if you'll be honest with yourself. And we want to continue to share this as more people engage with the spiritual health assessment. This is a code. There's a link that you could type in. It doesn't take very long. And if this is like too far away, or you're like, boy, I wish I could look at that a little bit longer to figure it out, what you can do is they're on our connections counters in the lobby, perhaps some other places out there. You can see it after the service. Well, today as we come back to this last message in the series Soulful, and by the way, next week I started a new series. It's just 3 weeks long. It's called Hope Holds, and it's about finding hope in a lot of the everyday issues that can sometimes really weigh us down. But today, as we look at the soul, we're looking back to a passage of Scripture that's anchored these messages, and that's found in Proverbs 4. It says, the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. One thing that should happen as you continue to follow God in the course of your life is that your path grows brighter. It becomes clearer. You become more connected to your purpose, and that you're following God. Your life should become full of things like peace and joy and love. That's what's meant to happen. But it doesn't always. I want you to think for a moment about when the last time was that you felt like your soul rested. When is the last time you felt like your soul was rested, at peace, your inner self, who you really are? I think one of the reasons why people long for a snow day, it's like some people, they're like, they've seen that this storm was coming back on Wednesday, and they already determined all the things that they were going to do, and they determined they wouldn't go anywhere, and they wouldn't do anything else, and they weren't coming to church, the whole thing. The reason why people love a snow day is because it disrupts the normal patterns of our lives. And that gives us a sense that our soul is getting restored. It's one of the things that happens. I think back, it's almost 6 years ago now. You remember when the pandemic happened and there was a lockdown? I really didn't like anything about the lockdown. I didn't lock down very well, I guess. But if you'll remember, everything stopped. Airports were empty for a time. Sports were canceled. Nobody knew what was next. It was scary. It was frustrating. It was weird. But something interesting happened. And that was that in the middle of all that fear and uncertainty, I kept hearing from people things like this. They'd say, as crazy as this is, I kind of like slowing down. And people started saying things like, it's been forever, but our family, every night, we're eating a meal together. We actually sat on our porch. We actually talked to our neighbors. My yard finally looks like I dreamed it could look. We took walks, we read, we rested. And, there was this thought, maybe this slowdown is a way to recalibrate our lives. But then, now almost 6 years later, everything opened back up. And the new normal became the old normal all over again. We find ourselves, Zooming with people while we're driving down the road. We might be sending emails while we're trying to coach a little league team. We find ourselves doing homework when we're half asleep, eating in a big hurry. We went right back to the rat race. For just a short time, we learned how to slow down. And then we all went right back to the same habits. And so I just want to ask you, have you learned anything about your soul through that experience? Because your soul's not meant to live on adrenaline. Adrenaline is there to help you through crisis. It's that chemical in your body that just helps you when you're you need extra strength, you need extra drive. But you can't live like that all the time. In fact, adrenaline has this strange reality to it that it helps you to feel better when you become unhealthy. It helps you to keep going after the point when you probably should have stopped or slowed down. When it comes to our souls, your soul, it's not meant to sprint all the time. Jesus, he in the middle of a series of thoughts that he has about things connected like the end of time, he says the most interesting thing in Luke chapter 21. He says, "But watch yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down." It also, other translations, they say, "Lest your hearts become dull with dissipation." That's like carousing, crazy partying, and drunkenness. And look what he says, "and cares of this life." Worries of this life. And that day come upon you suddenly like a trap. Trap. The trap, it's not just sin. The trap is the cares of this life. The trap is the worries of this life. The trap isn't just sin, it's speed. It's the dullness that comes to a soul that's living too fast. And something that I want for you to reflect with me a little bit about today is the fact that you and I, when it comes to our souls are like hungry all the time. We're hungry for all kinds of things. And something I want you to consider today is that your soul is needy by design. God made us in his image, and he crafted our interior selves in such a way that it has a specific purpose in mind. We started out this series, I was saying to you that you're the keeper of your soul. No one else can keep your soul. Your soul will only be as healthy as you are, as the keeper of it. And so, here's what you need to know about your soul. Your soul is filled with longing. And that's by design. That your inner self, your heart, your soul is is the neediest part of you. Your mind can get full, and your stomach can get full, and your fridge can be full, and your schedule can be full, and your soul will never stop craving for more. And that's because longing is the language of the soul that constantly asks for God to fill it. The longings that you have, they should say something to you about how it is that God could fill and satisfy your soul. I don't know if you saw it. In the early 1990s, there was this movie, What About Bob? It's with Bill Murray, Richard Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss is a therapist. Bill Murray is a very troubled person. They probably would not make this movie today. I'll just say that. He's very troubled. He's just like, he's got all kinds of neuroses, and he's compulsive, and he's got just all kinds of problems. And he's driving his therapist crazy. And at one point, he says to his doctor, gimme. I need. You know, I have the sense that that's what our souls are doing. That's what your soul and my soul says. We're constantly saying, gimme, I need. And that's not a flaw. That's a God-designed neediness. Because you're wired with infinite desire because you're made for an infinite God. You know, the ancients, the Greeks, they referred to the soul as the universe within. It's like we're aware that like there is this huge appetite within us. It'll never be enough, whatever it is. So that is to say that you and I, we're made in such a way that we are made with needs that only God can fill. One of my favorite thinkers from the ancient world is St. Augustine. He died in the early 5th century. And he writes this book called Confessions. If you ever have a chance to read it, you might enjoy it. It's kind of a spiritual biography. It's kind of a prolonged prayer that tells the story of his life. And in chapter 1, he writes these words. He says, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." Let's get into the infinite neediness of the soul. Augustine, he's not saying that our hearts are sinful until they rest in God. He's saying they're restless. Restlessness is not rebellion. It's a kind of homesickness. It's your restlessness within you. That's a homing signal for you to turn to God, to point your needs to God. Our longings that we have, they're meant to be something that God answers easily, helpfully. You know, Scripture doesn't shame longing. It tells us that it's actually a quality of a godly person. The Bible talks a lot about longing and desires. But look at just a few things that I could think of. You know, Psalm 42, "As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God." Or in Psalm 63, "My soul thirsts for you." In Romans 8, we're told that all of creation is groaning for its redemption from God. Or in Hebrews 11, we're given all these pictures of all these amazing heroes of faith. And At one point, the writer of the Hebrews, he says, the faithful lived as people longing for a better country. Longing. It's how we've been made. God answers longing with his presence. So if your soul never feels full, that's not a failure. That's an invitation. That longing within you is God saying to you, come to me. But there's a danger with it. Because when we don't recognize that our longings are pointing us to God, we start to try and satisfy what only God can meet and fill with things that are something else. They're never going to satisfy. So what do I mean? I mean, like, we search for security. And for some of us, we search for security with more and more money. Or we spend our lives searching for success because we have been wired for fulfillment. Or we look for the perfect romantic interest. And it's because we long for love that never ends. You know, I don't know how it is if you're in love or if you've been in love. You start talking about that love in eternal terms, right? You say, I'm going to love you forever. I'm going to be here forever. And you know it's not true, but it's a longing within you. Or we seek for approval from other people because the deepest longing of our souls is God's approval. Or we seek to control our circumstances, or maybe we seek to control other people because we're longing for perfection that never ends. Only God is like that. And then whenever we make security or success or romance, or maybe it's physical fitness, because we want to enrich and prolong our lives. Whenever we seek for human approval or control, and those things maybe become the quest of our souls, what starts as a longing easily morphs into an idol. Something that was good becomes ultimate. And we stop feeding our soul what can truly satisfy it, and what happens to us is that in the pursuit of trying to fill our longings with other things, we numb ourselves instead. And that's the trap. The trap is that we numb instead of nurture our souls. We just try and satisfy the hunger. And before we know it, our hearts are dull. So that even good things, like sports or kids' schedules or travel or entertainment, become soul-numbing because they crowd out God. And I want you to just listen to Job's words. He was a person who had come to the end of his rope. He was the richest man in his part of the world at the time. He loses it all. In Job 9, Job says this. He says, my days are swifter than a runner. They fly away without a glimpse of joy. Sounds like an empty soul. That is to say, for me, these words, they hit home. I can be running hard in my life and feel like I'm never catching up. I can be busy and find I'm not getting better. I can have a full calendar and find my heart is empty. That's the trap Jesus is talking about, because we confuse motion with meaning. We confuse activity with purpose. We confuse speed with our significance in life. But listen to me. You can't live at warp speed and walk with the Spirit of God. We started out this series talking about how, the Bible calls us to walk with the Spirit. You can't walk with the Spirit if you're just running through every day of your life. These longings within us, these longings for the most, the greatest, the best, they should tell us something about us. I love how C.S. Lewis puts it in his book, Mere Christianity. I mentioned it earlier in this series. Mere Christianity is an easy book to read. It's not very long, but he says this at one point. He says, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. So when you think about what it is you long for, I would just encourage you to ask yourself, what is it that I'm longing for in life that only God can meet? Ask Him for that. Ask Him to satisfy that. Your phone is designed to keep you scrolling, keep you touching it, looking at it, interacting with it. It's just how it's made. But it is a horrible soul guide. If you are constantly climbing into that hole and you're addicted to that, what it should be pointing out to you is that you have a hole in your soul. Only God could fill it. You're never going to find it there, or from any other kind of stimulation. Your soul was designed to keep you seeking for God, unlike your phone. The trap is hurry and worry, and so there's a cure. And the cure is a holy slowness about life. Holy slowness. Because listen, your soul can't be healthy in a hurry. It just won't happen. I can be in a hurry sometimes. I have been guilty of leaving things on planes. And because when the plane is done, I'm in a hurry to get off that plane and get to the next one or get to where I'm going. One time I was in a country somewhere in East Africa. I don't even know where. And when you're in another country, it's a major problem to lose your passport, especially when you're coming home. Yeah. And so I started looking for this thing. I remember, running back to where that plane was, and somehow they broke the rules and let me go on the plane. They never should have done that, but they did. And I couldn't find it. And I was just panicked. I was absolutely on the edge. But I have a backpack. It's got so many pockets. And that's where it was. But I was in such a hurry that I lost track of what was essential. I wonder if you can relate. For some of us, it's nothing short of a miracle that we haven't poisoned our souls with the pace that we live at. I'm glad you relate. Our souls are dying not because we're bad people. It's because we're overly busy people, filling our souls with all kinds of stimulation and distraction. But we don't need more stimulation. We need restoration. We need to be restored. We need to be renewed. And if your soul isn't healthy, the truth is you really can't help anybody else. Your family doesn't need a faster you. Your family needs a present you. I remember it was shortly after our youngest son was born. I was at a point in my life where I was really busy. Many days I was on the phone 10, 12 hours a day when I wasn't traveling, driving 6,000 miles in a month. And I remember one night I came home to my family with the new baby and the two little boys, and my phone rang. And I started talking on the phone, and my lovely wife, she helped me in such a key way. She just came over to where I was, and she started like pushing me to the garage door. And she opened the garage door, and she said, "You go out there till you're done with the phone." And when I got off the phone, I was like, "What's going on?" She's like, "When you get home from work, if you're going to talk on the phone, please go outside. Because we need you here. It's like you're not here when you're doing that." She was absolutely right. It's a habit that's helped me a lot ever since. You know, there are all kinds of things in life that will deplete us on the inside. And so, how is it that we can give our soul what it actually needs so that we can thrive? The psalmist elsewhere, this is what he writes, Psalm 84, "My soul yearns, even faints for the courts of the Lord." That's not some kind of poetic exaggeration. That's desperation. Because you can't breathe when you're just like running through life, pursuing your own agenda about everything. The soul doesn't faint because of hardship. It's distance from God. It is absolutely being disconnected from God. So what does your soul need to thrive? I just want to share with you 4 quick things. But I really think this kind of gets to the heart of it. First of all, your soul and my soul needs silence. To hear God's voice, you've got to turn down the other voices in your life. If you'd say you never hear God speaking to you in your heart, I would suggest to you that it's not because you're not spiritual. It's not because God isn't speaking. It's because you've got other volume turned up so high in your life you can't hear him. And for some of us, silence is scary because it forces us to face what's really going on inside of us. But silence is where God speaks. I remember when I was in my 20s, the church that I was serving in Wisconsin, they had been led by our pastor to pursue silence. And he, along with this other church we were connected with, we started taking silent retreats. My wife, Tracy, she went on some too. And these silent retreats, very, very different from what I was used to, you know. I was used to the kind of church like this, you know. You're raising your hands and you're just praying as hard as you can, as loud as you can. But at these retreats, you couldn't talk. We ate our meals in silence. The only words we spoke the entire weekend were either scriptures we were reading together or prayers we were saying together. No other words were spoken. And what I found at that time was that in the first 24 hours of silence, there were all kinds of voices that kept speaking to me about what I needed to do, about things that I needed to complete, about ways that I was wanting to kind of distract myself from the silence that was there. But I found after about 24 hours, when all those voices died down, If I would have had a cell phone, I wouldn't have been able to have it. It'd have been put away. What I found was after 24 hours, I discovered that God had been shouting at me all along. I just couldn't hear him. You and I, we need silence. Second thing we need is solitude. We need space to be with God without performing. To be a human being, not a human doing. We need space from others to connect with God. John and Charles Wesley, the famous preachers in the 1700s in England, their mother's name was Susanna. She had, I want to say, more than a dozen children in the family. She would take, when she wanted to spend time with God, with all those kids, she'd be in the kitchen and she'd take her dress, if I remember right, and she would throw it over her head to pray so that she could be alone. Now, I hope you don't have to throw your dress over your head. Hopefully not everybody's wearing a dress. But you hear what I'm saying here. You've got to get time where you're by yourself. Moses was transformed in solitude. He spent 40 years as a shepherd in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere before God used him to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. David was disciplined in solitude. He spent years running for his life, hiding in caves, all kinds of strange places, among sometimes foreign enemies. He would pretend that he was crazy. Solitude is what shaped him to become the greatest king that Israel ever knew. Jesus needed solitude. He would go off early in the morning to be alone with God. He spent 40 days fasting and praying in the wilderness before he started his earthly ministry. The Apostle John, he has this vision of Jesus that leads to the writing of the book of Revelation when he was in exile on the Isle of Patmos. We need solitude to discover God. Something else we need Sabbath. We need Sabbath. A day to stop producing and stop breathing. Start breathing. Stop producing and start breathing. And this isn't laziness. This is about recognizing God as the Lord. God is the provider. We're not. You know, I've heard more than one observant Jewish person explain the Sabbath that they celebrate each week from Friday night to Saturday night as a planned snowstorm each week. It's just like this snowstorm puts everything on hold. They schedule that every week with the Sabbath. You need it, and I need it. A day to eat a good meal, to laugh, to rest, to worship, to reflect, maybe take a nap. Finally, we need simplicity. Simplicity. We could also call this margin. We need to find a way to simplify our lives so that we can spend time with God. I have had a horrible habit in my life of filling my time so much that I could move from one meeting to the next till I come home and just crash at the end of the day, almost mid-sentence. It's a terrible habit. I've gotten better at it because my wife, she's an opposite kind of person. If I want to be connected to her, I can't let that be my life. Listen, you need simplicity, and it's as simple as this. You need to start cutting some things from your life. You need to start saying no to opportunities. Because even too much of a good thing can drown a soul. So today, I just want you to hear me to keep on the path that grows brighter and brighter, you must slow your pace. Some of you today, you're caught in a trap. Your days are going faster than a runner. You're running so hard, but you can't seem to find joy in living. And maybe you don't even feel stressed by it anymore because you've lived on adrenaline so long that it feels normal. But your soul is whispering to you, slow down. Please breathe deeper. Come home. You know, Jesus, he's different from any other spiritual or religious leader in the history of the world. So all the founders of the world religions, they give you a list of things to do. You know, do these 5 things and you'll get to paradise. Do this and you'll get enlightenment. Do that and God will be happy with you and he'll bless you. Jesus is so different. Because when he's talking about what it means to follow him, what it means to receive what he has to offer you and me, he says this, come to me. All you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I'm going to ask you right now, if you would, just stand with me. Just bow your head right where you are. Close your eyes. And let's pray. Father, for many of us here, our joy has thinned. Our prayer life, our connection with you, it feels dry. Many of us, we have been faithful and responsible and productive, but we have been quietly empty. And yet Jesus says to us, come to me, and I will give you rest. Today, God, we're looking for your renewing, restoring power. And we understand that because you are not in a hurry, if we're going to receive restoring power, we can't hurry either. We want to invite you to come and bring restoration to our souls. Today, in these closing moments here, I just want to invite you. You want some restoration? Why don't you come and spend some time in God's presence here at the altar. The altar is not about failure. The altar is about seeking God's renewal. We're just going to spend some time. God knows when the snow will melt. You don't need to get off and do other things. Just spend some time in God's presence. You don't even have to say a lot. Just let God know. You need him to fill your longings. As we start